As the sun rose over the land of the great river, its golden rays bathed the Nile's shores in a radiance that seemed touched by the divine hand of Ra, casting a warm glow across the verdant plains. The survivors of the great Exodus, guided by the unwavering vision of Atlan, had claimed this fertile land as their new home, a pristine canvas where the gods had bestowed the sacred task of forging a new world. Yet the path was strewn with trials. The searing memory of the cataclysm that had devoured their ancestral homeland lingered like a wound in their hearts, and the Nile's generous embrace hid formidable challenges. Ferocious beasts prowled the shadowed reeds, unpredictable floods threatened to drown their fledgling crops, and whispers of doubt gnawed at the spirits of the weary travelers, their resolve tested by the weight of their journey. Atlan, his face now carved with the deep lines of time and the scars of their perilous voyage, stood as a radiant beacon of hope amidst the uncertainty. Each dawn, he ascended a solitary hill overlooking the settlement, where a polished slab of black stone, gleaming like a mirror to the stars, served as his sacred altar for celestial communion. There, under the vigilant gaze of Sirius, the radiant star of Isis, Atlan turned his eyes to the heavens, seeking the god's affirmation that his people were fulfilling their divine mandate. The Tepi is not merely the end of the ancient world, he proclaimed, his voice resonant with the weight of prophecy, but the birth of an eternal order. We are the weavers of destiny, watched by the gods who guide our hands. The elder priestess Seret, whose wisdom was a steadfast anchor for the fledgling community, wove the survivors' spirits to the divine through sacred rituals. In a tranquil clearing encircled by whispering palm trees, she led ceremonies at twilight, where spirals of fragrant incense rose like prayers to the heavens and resonant chants echoed as if drawn from the very pulse of the cosmos. Seret mentored the young in the ancient rites, teaching them to invoke Ta, the creator god whose words shaped the world, and Ma'at, the goddess of cosmic order, ensuring their every deed reflected divine harmony. Without Ma'at, our labors will crumble, she cautioned, her voice trembling with the authority of countless years. Every stone we set, every seed we plant, must be aligned with the eternal truth of the cosmos. Kemet, the young scribe, emerged as the chronicler of this nascent world, his hands perpetually stained with the ink of sacred records. Tirelessly, he etched Atlan's visions and Seret's teachings onto clay tablets and fragile papyrus scrolls, capturing star maps, the Nile's rhythmic cycles, and hymns that wove the epic of their exodus. Yet Kemet's ambition stretched beyond mere documentation. His restless spirit dreamed of monumental structures that would enshrine the Star Watcher's legacy for eternity. Inspired by Atlan's celestial visions, he began sketching plans for a vast complex of temples and towering obelisks, each meticulously aligned with the stars that had guided their perilous journey. Our creations must speak to those yet unborn, Kemet declared, his eyes blazing with fervent purpose. Let the gods witness that we honor their sacred lessons. Neferu, the healer, became the beating heart of the settlement, her presence a balm to its struggles. Her tent, crafted from woven linen and infused with the soothing aroma of herbs, stood as a sanctuary for the wounded and the weary. With skilled hands, she blended ointments of myrrh and honey to mend injuries sustained in building the first mud brick shelters, while teaching the women of the community to cultivate healing plants along the Nile's lush banks. Yet Neferu was also a seer, guided by dreams where Isis, the divine mother, whispered secrets of life, death, and rebirth. These visions inspired her to create a sacred garden, a verdant oasis where plants were arranged in patterns echoing the constellations, a haven where the afflicted found solace for both body and soul, their spirits lifted by the celestial harmony. Rock, the navigator whose communion with the sea had preserved the fleet, now faced the formidable task of mastering the Nile's untamed currents. The river, with its capricious floods, was both a blessing and a challenge, its waters a lifeline yet a potential destroyer. Rock rallied fishermen and builders to carve intricate channels, taming the river's flow to irrigate fields without flooding them. His weathered face, etched by sun and wind, glowed with reverence as he spoke of the Nile as a living entity. This river is the lifeblood of our land, he said, his voice steady with conviction. If we heed its rhythm, it will sustain us. Under his skilled guidance, reed boats were woven, enabling the people to explore the river's reaches and trade with neighboring tribes, whose ancient tales echoed their own, of gods who had endured a great deluge. Yet unity was not assured. Beneath the surface, tension simmered among the survivors. Some, worn by relentless toil and haunted by fears of desert predators, began to question Atlan's vision. Meru, a former hunter from the Lost Island, led the dissenters, his voice sharp with frustration. "Why follow a man who reads the stars while our hands bleed in the soil?" he growled at torchlit gatherings. "Should we not seek safer lands, far from this treacherous river?" His words sowed seeds of discord, threatening to fracture the fragile community. Atlan, keenly aware of the peril to their unity, knew decisive action was needed to restore their shared purpose. On a night when Sirius and Orion aligned in a rare celestial dance, Atlan summoned the entire community to the hilltop altar. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and the soft hum of river insects, the stars above casting a silver glow. Grasping his golden staff, Atlan spoke with a voice that seemed to channel the god's own power. "We have braved raging seas and watched our world vanish beneath the waves," he declared, his words cutting through the night. "Yet the gods have not abandoned us. They led us to the Nile to build a legacy that will defy the ages. If we waver now, we betray not only the gods but the very spark of our humanity." To seal his words, Atlan gestured to a towering stone crafted under Kemet's design, its surface etched with the lion's symbol and the radiant star of Sirius. "This stone marks our first step," he proclaimed, his voice rising with conviction. "With it, we shall build a temple that will echo the Star Watcher's legacy across time." Sarat, her eyes glistening with tears, kindled a sacred fire at the stone's base, its flames leaping toward the heavens. Neferu scattered lotus petals, each a symbol of rebirth, their fragrance mingling with the smoke. Even Meru, stirred by the ceremony's power, bowed his head and pledged his heart to the collective dream. Years unfolded, and the settlement blossomed into a burgeoning city, its adobe homes and star-aligned temples rising as testaments to their resilience. Fields of barley and wheat flourished, nourished by Raka's ingenious channels, while Neferu's sacred garden became a pilgrimage site, where the afflicted found healing and priests meditated beneath the starlit canopy. Kemet, now a revered architect, oversaw the construction of a grand temple to Ra, its open courtyard designed to capture the sun's rays at each solstice, bathing a central altar in divine light. In her final days, Sarat blessed the young priests who would carry forward her legacy, her frail voice whispering that Ma'at's spirit lived in every act of creation, binding the community to the cosmos. Atlan, his life waning like shadows at dawn, bestowed a final gift upon his people. On a moonless night, he gathered the leaders, Kemet, Neferu, Rak, and the new priests, and presented a lapis lazuli amulet, its lion form glowing with an inner light. "This is the heart of Zep Tepi," he said, his voice a fragile whisper carried on the night breeze. "It holds the knowledge of our journey and the god's eternal promise. Guard it, and our legacy will live forever." That night, Atlan ascended the altar hill one last time, and legend tells that the gods welcomed him, his form dissolving into a radiant light that rivaled the stars themselves. Centuries later, the city along the Nile became the heart of a mighty civilization, its pyramids piercing the heavens and its temples chanting the glory of the gods. The descendants of the survivors, guided by the heart of Zep Tepi, preserved Atlan's teachings, inscribing them in stone and weaving them into sacred hymns. The stars remained their eternal guides, the Nile their lifeblood. The Zep Tepi, the first time, was not merely a memory but a living flame, burning brightly in every monument, every ritual, every beating heart, proclaiming to the world that from the ashes of chaos rises the eternal grandeur of creation.